Now, Positively Ernie with Ernie Anastas, a New York TV legend and radio host with great positive stories and interviews.
Thanks, Ernie. You're the best.
And now, here's Ernie.
Hi, everybody. Nice to have you back on the show. We want to do some positive stories, and I want to talk about something today that really I think a lot of you can relate to. This is a new book, an exciting book, and it's called A Smile, a Grin, a Laugh, That's Life. And the author is here joining me right now. He's part author, actually. This is John Galasso. Hi, John. Good to have you here.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you and your daughter wrote this book, right?
Yep.
This is we had a chance to talk a little bit before we went on. And, you were telling me about why you wrote this book. And there's a lot in it, and we're going to talk about it. But it's a personal story about how it came about. You had a little bit of an injury, and it led to something else as well. And it made you decide, through the help of your wife, that you should write a book about humor and how it can help heal your body and your mind and your soul in many ways. John, tell us about it.
Well, what happened was many years ago, I actually fell, and I have a very severe neck and back injury.
Yeah.
And instead of just feeling sorry for myself, I wanted to do something positive. So we wanted to put a smile on people's faces and just try to make their lives a little happier through laughter. I heard about Norman Cousins, who he had a very severe
Yes, he did.
injury.
Right.
And he basically wheeled a projector in his room, in his hospital room, and he watched comedy films all day long.
It's a famous story.
It's a famous story. Yeah. He went on. He was a professor, an author, and he wrote a book called Anatomy of an Illness, which sold millions of copies worldwide. And he claimed in his book that laughter helped him heal. So me having a very severe neck and back injury, actually my wife Vicky, she said, she bought me some comedy films, and I tried to do the same thing. And it's a mindset. You have to have a good mind. So when I did a lot of research and I approached my daughter Victoria, I asked her if she wanted to be a part of it.
And she wanted to write this book with you?
And she wanted to write the book, and she was she's a teacher,
right.
And she did a lot of research, and she's very focused and dedicated when she does something. And we discovered how laughter, it helps your immune system.
Oh, without a doubt.
It lowers your blood pressure.
I totally agree with you.
It helps reduce the sugar level in your body. Yeah. It helps your cortisol level, which is your stress, the hormones in your body.
Yes.
And there were tests that were done. This isn't like they're scientific tests.
Absolutely. There's good background on this.
That actually confirm what I'm saying. And one of the theories is that if, in fact, Norman Cousins pointed this out with the help of a team of doctors, that if negative emotions could cause chemical changes in the body, then why couldn't positive emotions
Absolutely. Just reverse.
Create positive?
Totally.
Right.
I think a lot of people, subscribe to what you're talking about, that it's a way of life. And, even the first word on here, a smile. Even if you just extend a smile to someone, you can feel the emotion. You can feel the interaction.
Absolutely.
And many times, if you just even force the smile, there's a chemical reaction that makes you feel good.
Absolutely.
So I agree with that. Now, you had a lot of interesting people involved in this book. Pat Cooper, by the way, who's a genius when it comes to humor, a terrific talent. He wrote the foreword to this book, and you got him involved in some ways, too. Tell us about that relationship and how it came about.
Well, Pat Cooper, we were the best of friends for many, 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 many years. I traveled everywhere with him. We've been to Italy, England, on the Queen Mary. We traveled all over together.
I used to see him at Rayo's.
He
used to hang around Rayo's a lot. Yeah.
And we traveled all over together, and I got a firsthand account of the behind-the-scenes comedic world.
Yeah.
And it was funny because, he said he was a comedian basically since he was a kid. And he said that if it wasn't, the humor is what kept him going.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the laughter, he said he wouldn't have been here. And then when I told him I said, Pat, do you actually know what the laughter does to the body, how it helps your immune system? And then he'd be like, I never knew that. He goes, now you got to start calling me Dr. Pat. I want to be referred to as Dr. Pat.
A lot of people, John, will recognize the fact that when you're looking at humor, it has to have some truth to it to be funny.
Absolutely.
So, when you're looking at real life situations, that's what makes people laugh. You can't just say something and think that it's going to be funny unless people can relate to it.
Absolutely. And that's what makes it funny.
Yeah.
You have to be able to laugh at yourself.
Sure.
And today, we're in a world where the world is we're in such difficult times. People are hurting. And laughter breaks down all barriers of race, religion, politics. And today, if laughter can ease the mood even in politics, there has to be something to it.
Right, exactly. But, we also have to be respectful of that laughter, because I think sometimes people are trying to make something light and trying to ease up, whatever the tense situation may be. But some people may not feel comfortable with that, and they'll find a way to say, why are you saying that? I mean, and being antagonistic about this is part of what we have to watch for. We have to be respectful of one another and say, look, it's just humor. As long as it isn't really cutting and painful and mean. If it's mean-spirited, you can tell the difference. You can tell when someone's having fun with you and when they're really trying to hurt you.
Well, as Don Rickles used to say, he'd say, anything I said, if it was meant to be mean-spirited, I never would have said it. And Pat Cooper used to tell me the same thing. He'd say, John, he goes, if what I was saying I meant, he goes, then I wouldn't say it to you. He said, I say it because you have to laugh not at something, you laugh in spite of something. And there's such a distinction there because Pat would take the most outrageous topics and he would poke fun at it and people would laugh. And there was one time that this is a little over the top, but there was a person at the Friars Club. They were 102 and they just passed away. And everybody was upset and they were giving testimonials. And then Pat, in his typical humor, he blurted out, he goes, what's everybody upset for? He's 102. I know it sounds a little harsh, but after that thing happened, his wife came over, who was in her late 90s, and she said, Pat, I really needed that. You eased the mood. And so everybody looks at humor differently.
Right, exactly. And, a lot of humor, too, is in the delivery.
It's in the delivery.
Yeah, people have certain personalities that they like because of the way they deliver a joke and the way their personality comes across. There's so much to it when you start thinking about the value of humor. Are we able to laugh more today, or because of the environment? I mean, we have a lot of serious things that are going on in our world, John, and how can we find a way to ease that using humor and having people be a little more understanding of one another? What do you suggest?
It's very difficult because my dear friend John Peasy, he was on America's Got Talent. He performs all over the country. We were just having this conversation the other day. He said, now, for the first time in his career, and he's performing 30 years, he said sometimes you have to watch a little bit about what you say because today everybody's offended about everything. He said, and you don't want to divide people. You want to bring people together.
Right.
And he was telling me, he said in the beginning, when I started doing what I do, he said, you want to make money, you want the applause. He said, but now his purpose is he wants to give back. He said, to the laughter, when you make someone feel good, he said, that is my reward today. I'm making them feel good through the laughter. He said, but today you have to watch a little bit.
John, you bring about a quote that I use often, Maya Angelou, who said, people may not remember what you said or did, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
That's true.
And that's so important. True. And that kind of feeling, for example, you and I are sitting here, right? There's a feeling between the two of us.
Absolutely.
We're respecting one another. We're enjoying our conversation. And there's a feeling that, that you have to understand when you're experiencing it. And I think that when you're listening to humor, you have to have that kind of an open mind and say, look, this person is making light of something. How does it, affect me? How can I appreciate it? How can I enjoy it? How can I share it? A lot of people like to share jokes. They like to be able to tell it to somebody else and see the kind of laughter that they get. You had a lot of people involved in this book. One of the people that you mentioned to me was Joel Osteen. Joel Osteen is a very well-known, personality on television, a preacher of sorts, a motivational speaker, a spiritual speaker in many ways. How did he get involved in this book?
It's an unbelievable story, and that's when I knew that I was on to something, because Joel Osteen, I contacted Lakewood Church, and I was shut down at every time I mentioned what I wanted to do. They said, Joel Osteen, I have no name recognition. I was nobody famous. And they said, he don't do interviews for people basically like me.
Yeah.
And then I got one person who was his assistant.
Right.
And I spoke with his brother-in-law. And I said, Don, can you just do me a favor? Would you just give him my message and see what he wants to do? And he goes, okay, John. He called me up and he says, I told Joel Osteen what you wanted to do, and he was all for it. He starts every sermon with a joke.
He does, yeah.
And he has 7 million people that listen to him worldwide every week, and he's in 100 different countries.
Right.
And he granted me the interview, and I couldn't believe it. And when he did, I was like, I said, this is unbelievable. I have to be onto something here, because, again, like someone with no name recognition, somebody that nobody recognizes. And he said, John, he goes, I want to do this interview. And after he did the interview, he dedicated an entire sermon to laughter.
That's great.
And what I was saying,
I think, it's a nice tribute to you.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I think it was sermon 498, and the whole thing was on laughter.
Right.
And he basically said everything that I said in the book, and I couldn't believe it.
He saw the value, and he saw the purpose in what you were trying to do. I have said this many times on my show, that many times before I go to bed, I will watch an episode of Seinfeld.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gotten to know all the characters so well, but I just enjoy it, and it just gives me that light feeling before I sleep. Speaking of comics, Abbott and Costello, what a great team they were. And you have something here from Chris Costello, who's the daughter of Lou Costello.
Yes.
What does she have to say?
She basically said, I asked her, I said, you growing up in a comedic family, I said, can you share anything with us? And she was another person that when I told her what message I was trying to get out, and she was like, I'm in, count me in. She said, whatever you need. And she told me how laughter, basically, she grew up in that environment, and how her father believed in the healing effects of laughter, and how she carried on the tradition. And she was so wonderful to speak with, and she told me that there's definitely something there. It is healing. It is all the things that were researched, and that all the things my daughter that she studied on this, she would say to me, Dad, what about this? What about that? And it was all true. And when I pointed these things out to Chris Costello and so many other people, they were like, this is really something, because it's basically you go to a doctor and they want to give you medicines, and this is cheap medicine. Yeah,
but you know what? Many times, even physicians, I've known several of them, who have used humor, who will lighten things up. That when you go into their office and they know that you're worried, and you're concerned about whatever is bothering you, they'll lighten it up and start asking you questions about your family and how do you feel and how you're doing, and maybe talk about something that's a little lighter, because it eases, the conversation that they're going to go into. I wanted to also ask you about the feedback. Many times, we do something and we say, did people like it? Did people enjoy it? How was that performance? What kind of feedback have you gotten from your book, Joe?
The feedback was wonderful. Yeah. It was wonderful. There were so many people that they claimed that they just didn't know. They didn't know that the benefits of laughter. You go in to see a comedy show and you say, oh, that was nice, and you leave. But when they actually found out what it did to the body, the mind, the body, and the soul, it was just everybody. I didn't get one negative reaction.
That's great.
And it just, I feel like it just helped so many people.
Without a doubt.
Because you were looking at things from a different mindset.
You know, they say laughter is an internal massage, that it makes you feel good.
Yes.
It relaxes your body. Do you have a favorite joke or a story that you like to share with people? Is there something that you can pull out of your mind there somewhere?
Oh, there's so many. There's so many. Well, I guess one of the things, you know, I guess it's a good story. Well, my wife Vicky, actually, she was getting surgery one day, and Pat called me up as we were in the waiting room, and he said to me, he was like, John, he goes, are you laughing? And I said, Pat, I really don't feel like laughing right now. And so after he yelled at me for 15 minutes, he said, I want to tell you, he says, I love your wife, Vicky. I'm not laughing that she's getting surgery. What's the matter with you? He says, you have to learn to laugh in spite of something, not at something. He said, so this is how I went through my life. The reason I'm telling this story is because he said that the laughter is what kept him alive. He, like all of us, you go through so many problems. You bet. And it's your mind that keeps you in check. You have two people, they have the same problem. Two people say they broke their arm. One person completely falls apart. And it's like, oh, my God, my arm is broken. What am I going to do? I don't know. I can't. Another person, the same situation. They go, well, like things happen, you know, and they just continue.
It's all about attitude,
so
John.
It's
all
your
about
attitude.
Without a doubt. And, you know, there's a lot to learn from children. Children are just fabulous. I love being around kids. And, you know, I did a story not too long ago about the number of times a child will laugh during the day. On the average, 300.
Yes.
300. And an adult, in comparison, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a day. Now, you're going to say, you know, we live in the real world, you know, we're adults, but it doesn't matter because you can still find that happiness and that joyful opportunity to smile and laugh. I think we all have that chance. This is a great book, A Smile, a Grin, a Laugh, That's Life, by Victoria, Galasso, and John. You and your daughter have done a great job. Congratulations on the book. I hope you continue to pass the good word around, okay?
We're trying. We just, you know, the purpose, we just want to put a smile on people's faces, and we want to tell them that a better life is available. You just have to, look at things from a positive, it's a positive attitude. It's the mindset. Just, you know, with all the negative things going on, just think that there's a healthier, happier life away.
I love it.
And it could be just one laugh away.
There you go. That's all it is. Keep smiling. Thanks so much. John Galasso, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks
you so much. Thanks for being here, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.